Good morning, everyone. Senate Finance Committee will come to order. It's March 23rd, 2021. For the record, we do have a quorum, and we have 3 bills before us today. One of them you've seen, but we now have a revised fiscal note, Senate File 276. Senator Housley, welcome back to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and you are correct. Senate File 276, we heard in this committee 3 weeks ago when we were just waiting for the fiscal note. For a reminder, this is a bill about making the process of getting your driver's license much quicker. This bill allows for private behind-the-wheel instruction to be certified by the state of Minnesota to administer Class D driving tests. Since then, the Department of Public Safety has come out with their 70-page report on driver examination stations. And I think the report even further solidified why we need to privatize or have the option for parents and those wishing to get their driver's license to have another option besides the one that's run by the state. The findings were that DVS has been unable to consistently satisfy a requirement in law that establishes a maximum wait time of 14 days for Class D. Only 30% of those in the state were able to get an appointment within 14 days. And they did a lot of other things in the summary, but again, which I think is back up to why private third-party testers is a good solution to help alleviate the backlog and help get our kids their driver's license quicker. But to that point, we're here because of the fiscal note, which we just got, which I don't know why it took so long because it's the exact same fiscal note that we had a year ago. So it would, according to the department, it would be a biennial total of $6,087,000 for fiscal year 23 to get it up and running, and then for the next biennium, $5,325,000. So that is it, Madam Chair. I can stand for questions, and I think probably somebody from the department is here to talk about the fiscal note.
Thank you, Senator Housley. We do have an A3 amendment too that I'm sorry. Okay. We're going to post the amendment quickly though, but from what I understand, it's more of a technical fix to a concern that the department had, but let's get that up and running. In the meantime, I think we'll go to Ms. Boyd to run through the fiscal note. Members, you should all have that either in the packet or online.
Madam Chair.
Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Okay, so the fiscal note is largely the same as the one for the bill last year. Slight differences, mostly because obviously of the different starting date. The fiscal year costs are a little shifted, and there are some slight increases that I'll point out. Most of the costs have to do with staff, salaries, and one-time cost related to staff because of the auditing requirements that are in the bill. And the number of employees of the department assumes they will need to complete this. So I'm trying to think of where to point you out to. I guess we'll just go over the numbers. If you want to go to page 4 and 5 of the fiscal note. So like I said, most of the costs have to do with staff. There are a couple other things, assuming some programming cost needs to be done to the FastDS system to allow third-party testers access to make reports and access that system in other ways. So at the bottom of page 4, you can see there's a one-time programming cost of $224,000. And then at the top of the next page, you'll see the cost delineated on page 5 related mostly to staff. These are, I should point out the number of staff. I believe there were 29 FTEs, and I apologize, I didn't have that marked in my 26 examiners, and then I believe a couple of support staff. So at the top of page 5, you can see the salary lines, the one-time furniture and equipment costs, the ongoing monthly costs per FTE for space, et cetera, vehicle leases, travel costs as employees travel around to do these audits throughout the state for the testers, some facility rental for trainings and projector costs. There's also a one-time cost for rulemaking estimated by the department, about $345,000, that's one time. So you can see the total cost for fiscal year 22 would be $3.4 million approximately, and that is estimated to come out of the driver services operating account and the special revenue fund. And then most of these costs are ongoing related to salaries and travel, and those continue into fiscal year 23 and beyond.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. And it looks like there's 26 full-time state program administrators, intermediate SPAIs with an annual salary of $83,000. So my question, and I'm not sure if you can answer it, or Senator Housley, or maybe somebody on the department, but why are we, what is with the office space? I'm a little surprised that the fiscal note is the same as last year, since we were more mobile, and now we're virtual, and we still are paying for cubicle furniture, office space on page 3, chairs. I mean, can somebody answer that, please?
Madam Chair, I don't know if I can answer it sufficiently. I don't know if there's anyone from the department here this morning,
Let's
though.
hear from the department. Am I the only one that's looking at that and kind of wondering? Thank you, Senator Benson. I just think that's very odd that we are buying office space now, and perhaps that's needed, but, okay.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Senator Benson.
I find it interesting. I'm going to turn on my video so that people can see that I'm here. But I find it interesting that we have this backlog. How much is it going to cost to resolve the backlog? Because they have to resolve the backlog. And as far as I'm concerned, this is a valid proposal for eliminating the backlog. It would be interesting to see what the department's proposal is as an alternative, and is it more or less expensive? But we have to resolve the backlog, and the department has to take responsibility for that. So it would be interesting to see what their solution is. Senator Housley is trying to use resources that are already in the community. Seems the department is trying to kill this by fiscal note.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Senator Benson. And Ms. Boyd, can you tell me how much is in the driver services account?
I can. Madam Chair, the last figures I have were from late 2020. I have not seen an updated balance estimate, but in the driver services account, at the end of fiscal year 2021, the balance after reserves is estimated at that point to be about $13.5 million.
Madam Chair.
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Housley, I think if I recall right, we asked this question once before. The assumptions are really important when you do a fiscal note. And a real key one on this is the 100 third-party testers. And if I recall right, we asked you this question, and you had some information about how many possible and how close this assumption comes to actually being accurate in your opinion. So Senator Housley, could you address that assumption of 100 third-party testers?
Senator Housley.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Kiffmeyer. That is the estimate by the department. I have not heard that there will be that many third-party testers wanting to jump up and do this. I do know that since COVID, DVS consolidated from 93 exam stations throughout the state down to 15. And in the OLA auditor report, they wanted them to open that back up because they're required by law to make sure that every county has a testing site either in that county or next to that county, and they're not meeting those requirements right now. So I am not sure how many, and I know it's not going to be 100 because I haven't heard from, I think I've heard from maybe 7 to 10 that want to do this, but that was the assumption by the department.
Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, this is really important to realize that. The other thing is the material fact that they have closed down these testing stations, and I understand that during that time. Senator Housley, have you heard from the department when they're going to comply with the law that says have these open and meet those statutory requirements? What have you heard from the agency?
Senator Housley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Kiffmeyer, I have not heard anything from the agency.
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Madam Chair, have you heard from the agency on their plan? I mean, we're looking at third-party testers here. We're doing what we can. We already have state law that requires them. Have you heard, Madam Chair, from the agency as far as what their plan is to solve this and come into compliance with state law?
No, no, I have not, Senator Kiffmeyer, and you sit on transportation, Senator Kiffmeyer?
I do. That's why some of the information that I'm talking about today, I would have thought that by this time, we would have heard from the agency. If their claim is they can do this, then I'd like to know what the plan is. I would like them to be on record saying, this is what they're going to do. They're going to reopen. They're going to take care of this backlog, and they're going to come into compliance with Minnesota state law in those county-based testing stations. Really important. Not everybody in Minnesota can be driving down to the Twin Cities or hours and hours from northern and all those corners of Minnesota. That just isn't fair and isn't right. And so I just think, I would have thought by this time that they would have had a response to that. Are they here today, Madam Chair?
No, Senator Kiffmeyer, they're not, and unfortunately, and I'm kind of surprised they haven't said something in Transportation Committee, too, about their commitment to this. So that was my question to you, is have they said anything in Transportation?
Madam Chair, another question is in regards to the fiscal note. When did this fiscal note arrive?
Senator Housley?
Madam Chair, Senator Kiffmeyer, it arrived 4 days ago, I think, is when I got it in my email. And Madam Chair and Senator Kiffmeyer, it is the same. This has been around for over a year. We've been talking about this over a year. So, right, we've had time to get a plan. It's the same fiscal note as it was a year ago, except we had the hearing 3 weeks ago and they still didn't have the fiscal note. And now just to get it 4 days ago is kind of disappointing because I felt like there could have been some sort of plan or solution in place when they've had plenty of time.
Senator Kiffmeyer?
Madam Chair, so this is getting to be an ongoing problem where we have strong delays in fiscal notes that should not have been that difficult. So it's concerning to me, and the Legislative Budget Office that coordinates these is dependent upon the agencies complying with Minnesota current law and cooperating with the Legislative Budget Office. So it's rather disappointing, to say the least, and hampers our work at not being able to have the fiscal note timely to be able to address these or know what their assumptions are. But with that, Madam Chair, I think for this moment, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kiffmeyer. I'm a little concerned that there wasn't a conversation, too, with Senator Housley on these assumptions also. And right now, let's get the bill in the shape that you would like, Senator Housley. I'm thinking, and
Madam Chair, I could move the A3 amendment.
Senator Kiffmeyer moves the A3 amendment, and Senator Housley to the A3.
Madam Chair and Senator Kiffmeyer and members, yes, I got a chance to look at the A3 amendment, and I am in approval of it, so a yes vote is fine.
Thank you. So basically, it's just distinguishing who is eligible on page 7, line 21, which is...
Madam Chair, if I could just, I did look.
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Yeah, while I was waiting. So on page 7, line 21, it says test person related to the tester by blood, marriage, or adoption. And what the amendment does is specify, be more specific, spouse, fiance, grandparent, parent, child, sibling, legal guardian, adoptive, half-step, and in-law relationships of the person taking the test.
Thank you. On that, on the A3 amendment, members, any questions? Senator Kent on the A3? Senator Ingebrigtsen on the A3?
Madam Chair, I would move A3.
We already have a motion on the table. Senator Ingebrigtsen, Senator Kiffmeyer.
I'm sorry, I have a question after
Okay,
for discussion.
thank you. On Senator Kiffmeyer's motion, all those in favor of the A3, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion prevails. Okay, A3 is adopted, and Senator Kent, you are up first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was trying to see if I could locate this information, but it's my understanding that they have reopened, DVS has reopened a number of testing sites. It's almost double from what I understand where it was, that they're back up close to 30, but I couldn't find the specifics on it.
Senator Kiffmeyer, or Senator Kent, did you ask a question? You kind of faded out there for a second.
Sorry, no, there was not a question. I was just trying to offer the information from the earlier discussion that my understanding is that those sites, the testing sites, have begun to reopen, to the conversation between Senator Housley and Senator Kiffmeyer, that they're back up to about double where they had been because of COVID. There's more testing happening, and close to 30 is what I had heard, but I'm trying to find that information.
Okay, thank you. Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Note, which is, outlandish to say the least. I think we're just going to continue to run into these issues when you got one person running state government. I mean, it's very clear, very clear. I mean, he's just not giving guidance to his departments, and now we're hearing that they may be coming back online. The author of the bill hasn't even heard that. It's really unfortunate that we can't get this done. I've had parents say that I'm in Alexandria, Fergus Falls. We got to drive way over to the east part of the state or way down to the southern part of the state to get their test. I mean, this is nothing short of crazy, and to stonewall with it appears a real stonewall with the cost here is trying to scare us and make us go away. It just appears that's all it is, Madam Chair, and that's just my opinion.
Thank you, Senator Ingebrigtsen. Senator Marty.
Madam Chair, I wish the department was here because I have a lot of questions, but in response to Senator Ingebrigtsen, I guess my concern becomes that the reason the department is short of this is funding. If we have no backlog, if we hire enough people to provide the services, to provide the training, and instead we're saying, well, they don't have enough people to do it, so we'll do this, and whether the fiscal note is accurate or not, I wish we could talk with the agency about it, but the point is, this is going to cost the agency more, which means they're going to be pulling back more from elsewhere. And the amendment we just passed, I supported that amendment, because there's a conflict of interest if you're going to test your own kids or your relatives or something else. But I think a much bigger problem with this is if people are allowed to test their own students. You go through my program and you're going to get your license, practically guaranteed if the people are doing that. I think that's a bigger concern here. And to me, this is simply, unless we're going to appropriate the funds for this, we're hitting the department more, and then they're going to be cutting back further. So I think basically we're blaming the department for lack of funding, and then we're going to take away their funding more and make it worse, so we can blame them further. So I guess I have problems with the whole concept, especially because of the fact we're going to have people who are testing people who they have an incentive to pass. And I think we have safe roads in Minnesota because we have a good system now, a huge backlog, but that could be funded by, instead of putting $2.5 million a year ongoing here, putting that money into the agency to hire more testing stations.
Madam Chair, to that point.
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Madam Chair, to that point, let's recall that this department already has all the funding for those testing stations. That's a part of their base budget. This is a matter of, are they functioning? They have the money, and if they were up and functioning, that would reduce the backlog. Now, we understand temporarily there was a period of time, but it's been a long time of them being not available to the people of Minnesota and putting them in the spot of driving long times in order to get this testing done. But just so remind us, they already have that funding for all of those testing stations. That is the normal part of their budget. The other thing is to realize that Senator Housley did a great job at saying, test a person related to the tester by blood, marriage, or adoption. It was very clear that in her original bill, she had that. Now, the department wanted it to be more specific, which is helpful, because then you can look at each of these individual ones and be able to do that. I appreciate that. But please, let's not construe that Senator Housley did not include blood, marriage, or adoption in her original bill. She did think of that, and she did include that in her bill. I think the sooner these testing stations are up that are already funded, that is what really will make a difference.
Madam
Senator
Chair,
Marty? Senator Marty?
I may have misspoken if I said testing stations. I meant testing people, the professionals who test you. If we have more money for more testers, you don't have a backlog. You have 1% too few, that means the first week you have 1% that doesn't get their test. The second week, you got that backlog plus the next backlog. So if you're 1% short of testers, you're going to have a backlog that's going to grow. And if you provide more people for testing, I'm not talking how many stations, and if I said that, I apologize, but I meant how many people are performing the tests. And as far as the other thing, my concern about the conflict of interest, my concern wasn't whether she had, and I agree, she had it earlier in the bill, she had some people. The amendment today only extended the number of relatives you couldn't test. My concern isn't about the relatives, that's a legitimate concern, but I saw that was in the bill, I wasn't complaining about that. My concern is that I can open a driver's license testing program. I can test all the students, I can take all the students I can get, and I can test my students, and I have an incentive to get them out of there. And to say, hey, you know, come to us, we're such a great testing school, all of our students get their exams on the first time. And I'm not saying it's exactly how it works, but there's a clear conflict of interest there, and this doesn't get to that. I'm not disagreeing, I supported that amendment, and I thought that the bill was appropriate to have those exceptions to who you can test already. My concern was we're creating a huge conflict of interest where testing programs are the incentive to pass their own students.
Madam Chair?
Senator Kiffmeyer, and then we have.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. I just think it's really important for on the record here that we understand the department, when they have testing stations, with that goes testers. You don't build a testing station without the intention to have testers. So without question, whether it's you use the word stations or testers, they need a place to test. And if you have testing stations, you need to have testers. That's already in base funding and is understood and has been in those funding metrics. And I think it's important that we have that on the record.
Thank you, Senator Kiffmeyer. Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Thank you. And Senator Housley, does your bill eliminate existing positions at the drivers' evaluation centers?
Senator Housley.
Madam Chair and Senator Ingebrigtsen, no, it doesn't. People have the choice to still go to the state-run testing sites or to the private ones.
Right.
It does not eliminate any employees or any testing stations.
Thank you. So
Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Madam Chair, thank you. So to Senator Marty's concern with regards to a conflict of interest, the only conflict of interest that I see here is that union positions are not going to grow. And they're not losing any positions. They're simply going to a different sector, the way I understand it, to get the professionals done. In other words, private industry versus public. That seems to be the only conflict, and that probably runs hand in hand with the huge fiscal note that we have.
Senator Housley.
Madam Chair, Senator Ingebrigtsen, thanks for that. And as to Senator Marty's comment, there has been, we privatized or the option of for bus drivers to get their driver's license, their CDL license, and there has been no issues of conflict of interest there, nor in the other states that do this. There have been no conflicts of interest. So to your point, Senator Ingebrigtsen, I completely agree. We haven't heard of any. Of course, in theory, there could be the possibility of it, but to this date, there hasn't been any. And to Senator Kent's point, right, they have increased and reopened some of the testing stations, but they still went from 93 to 15. So now they're 93 to, I hear 30, but I haven't heard that from the department. So, and when I said by law, they have to have a testing station in their county or the county next to it, if you're outside the metro, in rural Minnesota, folks are driving an average of 60 miles to get to the testing station. If you live in Halleck, your closest testing station is 156 miles away in Bemidji. So there still is a huge need for this, and I'd encourage everybody to read the OLA report because all of the issues have bubbled to the surface.
Thank you, Senator Housley. Any further questions, comments? Well, I think what I'm going to do is first make a comment that I'm very disappointed DPS is not here to answer some of these questions. They fully knew that this was coming back up and that they did not have a conversation with Senator Housley about this, about the assumptions. So I'm going to be asking that conversation to continue because we are going to be sending this to general orders. I'm very disappointed in the fiscal note. And I don't think there was an effort to relook at this with the current situation. And that's what we need to do. So it was just a late fiscal note, as Senator Housley said. It's the same, basically, and really not looking at exactly what current state we're in right now. So hopefully that it comes with something different. You've already been here. This is your second time to the Finance Committee. But I do think it's time to move this on, and I hope the conversation continues. And hopefully, there are some different assumptions that you will be apprised of, Senator Housley, that you can tell us all about too. With that, Senator Ingebrigtsen, would you like to please move the bill as amended?
Madam Chair, I would move the Senate file as amended to be passed and sent to general orders.
On that motion, video on, audio on. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay.
No.
The motion prevails. Thank you, Senator Housley.
Thank you,
for your
Madam Chair
time.
and members. Thank you.
Senator Chamberlain, welcome to the committee. We have Senate File 1444, your Education Standards and Licensing Board.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not nearly as difficult or complicated as that.
And Senator Chamberlain, you do have an amendment, I see.
I do a technical amendment changing the effective date as this is a matter of some
Madam-
timeliness.
Oh, apparently it's not posted yet,
Okay.
Senator Chamberlain, so we will wait for that motion. You can go through the bill and we'll get to the fiscal note. Thank you.
Right. Well, as you know, we have Teachers Licensing Standards Board, Minnesota. Teachers get licensed and they have to renew those licenses periodically. Part of that renewal is our tests, and they have to take them obviously in a timely manner so their licenses get renewed on time. Due to COVID shutdowns and delays, some, if not all, or many of the testing sites had limited capacity or had shut down completely. That obviously created a problem for the teachers in enabling them to take these tests to renew their license and be able to keep teaching. So this, last year, this was, the licensing tests were extended, the renewals were extended for 6 months due to the COVID issue. You'll recall that. So this simply extends it another 6 months. Same things we did last year, extends the renewal period for the licensing renewal period for 6 months and allowing those teachers to get those tests. The state pays for the licenses, so it's not a savings, it's just a delay in the payments, as you see in the fiscal note. $171,000, give or take, will not be paid now, but will be paid later when they eventually take those tests. So that's some of the bill. We just want to ensure that these teachers are enabled to keep their licenses. We don't disrupt that, and that we.
Thank you, Senator Chamberlain. Any questions? Senator Marty.
Madam Chair, thank you, Senator Chamberlain. Is the department here on this, and what do they feel about the bill? And I guess my main question is how many people are getting it done anyway? I'm just curious. I don't have any objection to the bill, but wondering whether it's happening. What's happening?
Well, They are
Senator
able,
Chamberlain.
some are able to test, obviously, but, oh, which one am I looking at here? They are
Just-
able to test, obviously.
Senator Chamber, just look at me, right? Or look at, oh, no, look at that camera, okay.
The light. Yeah, Senator, Madam Chair, and thanks, Dallas. Madam Chair and Senator Marty, they are able to test currently, but there is a backlog because some of these testing stations are closed or they have limited capacity still. So they're getting through, but there's a concern that these tests that have to be done by June 30th will not get done.
Senator Martin.
And Madam Chair, in effect, delaying it, they're still able to take them now. They'll still continue doing it. The fiscal note is basically saying some of them are going to be in the next fiscal year and therefore delaying that.
Right,
Okay.
Senator Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It seems reasonable. I can't see any problems with the bill.
Thank you. Senator Kent.
Actually, never mind, Senator Marty covered it.
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Senator Kiffmeyer.
I'd like to move the A1 amendment. I think it's been posted and everything. We're good to go. And what this does is an effective date that is right after enactment. Otherwise, you have to wait until July 1st or something like that.
Super. Senator Kiffmeyer moves the A1 amendment. Video on, audio on, please. All those in favor of the A1 amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those opposed say nay. Amendment is adopted. Thank you, Senator Kiffmeyer. And to the bill, anything else? Senator Chamberlain, that was easy. It's nice to see you before the committee. We do have Ms. Hofer, if she'd like to mention anything about the fiscal note. You saved me money. Save the state money.
No.
Madam Chair, thank you. Senator Chamberlain did a very nice job describing the impact of the bill. You do have the fiscal note, I believe, in your committee packets. On page 2 of the fiscal note, I would just direct you to about the top third where we see the state cost and savings table. You can see the revenue change that Senator Chamberlain mentioned there. It's a revenue reduction of $171,000 in fiscal year 2021 and an equal increase in fiscal year 2022. And this is due to extending the renewal period for 6 months from June 30th, 2021 to December 30th, 2021. The note is actually based on data that Pellsby collected from the last extension. And as a result, they estimate that about 3,000 renewals of the 18,000 annual renewals will be affected by this legislation. So the annual application fee is about $57. So that multiplied by the 3,000 gets us to $171,000. That will just move to the next fiscal year. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Hofer. Okay, any questions on the fiscal note? All right. Senator Kiffmeyer, would you please like to move the bill as amended?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I will move the Senate File 1444 as amended to be recommended to pass and be referred to general orders.
On that motion, give you time to turn your video on, audio on. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion prevails. Thank you, Senator Chamberlain, for coming and being patient.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Finance Committee. Have a wonderful day.
You too, thank you so much. Senator Mathews. We have Senate File 450, California Emission Standard. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Just briefly on your bill, and then we'll go straight to the fiscal note.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to present Senate File 450 in an attempt to claw back and repeal some of the rulemaking authority that the Pollution Control Agency has. The standards that they have been proposing through this rulemaking process have gone too far and are even violating current law. There's areas in the law that are included within the bill. That's the main text of the statute within this bill that point to how standards that the agency sets should be, no single standard should be applicable to all areas of the state. The law also points out that one standard in one area of the state may not be proper to another area of the state, and that standards should be premised on scientific knowledge of causes as well as effects based on technically substantiated criteria. And the proposed rulemaking have fallen short in those areas, and this has caused large and grave concerns all over the state of Minnesota. This is an issue I hear about often and regularly back in my district. By the PCA's own calculations, the impacts on the level of emissions after these standards would be implemented are very minimal, and they will instead be harmful to businesses, to the dealers and the manufacturers that would be impacted by the rules based on the types of vehicles that they would be allowed to sell in this state. Now, the agency has argued otherwise, saying that this would not have an impact on businesses, that it's only impacting manufacturers, but the dealers have consistently argued that it does, in fact, harm them because they have relationships with manufacturers, and you cannot pretend that an impact on manufacturers does not have an impact on the dealers in all of our communities around the state. Furthermore, cars are getting cleaner on their own. The market needs to work itself out in this area. They're asking for time to let this continue to play out as cleaner vehicles become more and more prevalent, more and more affordable and available to more people. And the impacts of this rules would be to increase the costs on all vehicles, put a higher pressure on the used vehicle market, which would increase the cost of that as well. And finally, this rulemaking process is not a transparent process. This should be determined and decided by the legislature, which is far superior in its transparency and its accountability to our citizens and to our constituents all over the state of Minnesota. These standards, if changes need to be enacted, ought to be done through the legislature, where our representatives and senators who are accountable to our own district can argue and debate what should happen, what should be changed, cast a vote in the way that we choose, and then be accountable to our districts for our vote. And that process has been, there's been an end around of that process through this rulemaking process. So this has been a priority for several years. I've had many committee stops on this over the couple of years, and I appreciate the chance to come and present this to your committee today, Madam Chair. Thank you.
And we'll go to Mr. Mueller to go through the fiscal note, please. There we go.
Madam Chair, I did not hear your question.
I would like to have you go through the fiscal note, please.
Okay, Madam Chair, the fiscal note basically just showed a savings of $22,000 to the PCA for the rest of this fiscal year. And that's all the fiscal note showed. It did not try to anticipate any other additional savings ongoing for implementing the rule, because it felt that they did not know the outcome of the rulemaking process. So the only savings the fiscal note showed was just the $22,000 of anticipated costs for the rest of this fiscal year. And that was to the environmental fund.
Any questions on the fiscal note?
I do, Madam Chair. But there are others with a hand up, so if they go first.
That's why you couldn't hear me, Mr. Mueller. My microphone was off. Okay, thanks. My apologies.
Okay.
Patience is going to be the key word here in finance, guys, going forward. So, any questions on the fiscal note? Thank you, Mr. Mueller.
Madam Chair, I do.
Yeah, Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Madam Chair, and thank you. And Mr. Mueller, can you give me an idea, and maybe you don't have it at your fingertips, what the MPCA has spent on this rulemaking process so far?
Mr. Mueller?
Mr. Chairman, or Madam Chair and Senator Ingebrigtsen, let me see here. I do have information from the department that they sent out back in, I think it was February or January. And at that time, they said there was about $353,000 they had spent on the rulemaking, on this rulemaking process as of that time. And I doubt if there was much more spending since then, because most of the rulemaking process and the public hearings had already happened by that point.
Senator Ingebrigtsen on the fiscal note?
Thank you. And on the fiscal note, Madam Chair, so of the, just so people understand, $353,000 was, that was not put in bill form. That was just simply being spent by the agency with the money they have in one of their funds without first coming to the legislature. Is that correct, Mr. Mueller?
Mr. Mueller?
Madam Chair and Senator Ingebrigtsen, that is correct. They use their regular operating dollars for that rulemaking process.
Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Out of the environmental fund. Largely the cost of the PCA comes from the environmental fund.
Thank you. Madam Chair,
Senator Ingebrigtsen.
just real quickly, is there anybody here from the agency at all?
Yes, there is, Senator Ingebrigtsen.
My fear is that I'll probably get into too much policy here. I don't know that you want to go that direction, Madam Chair. This has been talked about in my committee, Rude's committee, combined Rude Ingebrigtsen committee, several committees throughout the last couple of years, and just another indication of one person ruling here without letting the rest of the legislature getting involved. 201 of us to make a decision this big versus one agency. I'll finish up real quickly with history. I've asked through my budget process, the agency to put a 4-year moratorium on that during negotiations, not to repeal as this bill does, but just to put a 4-year pause on it so people can understand what's going on. We went from there to a 2-year pause and still no cooperation from the Walz administration on this. So this has been around a while, it's been bantered around, but there's just absolutely no stopping this. And it appears that December 31st this rule will be accomplished unless the administration puts a stop to it and gives it time for the public to vet. Any dollar spent beyond this is foolish. So with that, I guess I can ramble on and on and on, but Madam Chair, thank you.
Senator Ingebrigtsen and members, we do have Mr. Frank Kolash from the PCA here, also for questions, if anybody would like to ask. Senator Champion, you were next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I am uncertain if I want to ask the department a question because I think Greta Gautier is here as well. But before I do that, maybe this question will go to Senator Mathews. And I think it's probably important for me to put it in context. Senator Mathews, in your earlier recitation, you talked about how your community or someone that you have been talking to had been expressing some concern back in your district and how you believe that the reason why you're bringing this information forward or this proposal forward is because of that concern. And Senator Mathews, I'd like to know how you will resolve the issue of concern in your district and concern in my district when it comes to this proposal that you're putting forward. Because this proposal you're putting forward is to repeal the rulemaking authority. And specifically to your bill here, it seeks to undermine MPCA's authority to implement clean cars in Minnesota. And the reason why this is important to me, and I hope that you give me a moment and then you answer the question, is because low and zero emission vehicle standards will help to address the leading cause of carbon emissions in our state and will help clean up our air pollution. And why this is important to me, and should be important to you as well, is because communities of color and low-income communities, such as those in my Senate district, bear disproportionate impacts from air pollution. These communities, my communities, have the highest exposure to on-road vehicle pollution because we live in high-traffic areas, and on-road vehicles contribute to 24% of air pollution emissions in Minnesota. These same communities, my community, experience higher rates of asthma and other chronic diseases, which puts them at higher risk when you think in terms of their lifespan. And they end up having what I call short and long-term exposure to air pollution. And these are the same groups at the highest risk for severe effects from the coronavirus as well, because there is a nexus there. So air pollution from vehicle emissions is harming our health. And we see this every single day. And so reducing auto emissions will contribute, will undermine, but reducing auto emissions will contribute to healthier communities and healthier lives, especially for those, for the low income communities and communities of color. So with that being said, you talked about, Senator Mathews, your community. Tell me how this bill will impact my community and what should the MPCA do as a result of that? Because my community lives here in Minnesota as well and should be given the just due and consideration. So if you answer that question, then I have one more, Senator Mathews.
Senator Mathews.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Champion, and excellent question. I appreciate you bringing it forward. I have a two-part answer to that. Number one, what should we do? We should determine this policy through the legislative process. All 201 of us legislators are interested in making our environment cleaner and better. That is a universal belief that we all share in. But we have a process where the rulemaking process of going around the legislature is not the proper venue for these changes to be made. And so what the PCA should do is to redirect this conversation back to the legislature where we can get all of these viewpoints in, because one viewpoint from one part of the state is not more important than any other part of the state. And the legislative process can accomplish that with 201 legislators from all places of the state coming in and having their voices heard and weighing in on these standards. But as to the underlying rules that the agency is trying to accomplish, their own data is showing that it's not going to have the type of significant impact that they claimed it have. And I don't have the number in front of me, Madam Chair, but we've established this in prior committees as to what the agency has laid out would be the impact, and it's a very, very tiny percentage of the overall emissions. So even in your effort to clean up the environment in your district, I don't believe these rules are going to accomplish that, and I think the data has backed that up. So I do think there needs to be efforts that we can all join in on to figure out where we can do better, but going around the legislature in this rulemaking process is not that route, and I think the agency should redirect this back to the legislature where we can work on what the state's policies should be for the environment to help your district and to help across the state of Minnesota.
Madam
Senator
Chair, may I
Champion?
follow?
Yes.
Senator Mathews, I'm sure that you will agree that the legislative process is not the, well, you may say that it's the legislative process is the best process, but we know that the legislative process is a flawed one. When you think in terms of, number one, that there could be policies that are put forth that not all the chairs here, that there are various bills that should be a part of robust conversations during the legislative process that never gets heard at all. Secondly, if it is to be heard, it is a small window of time and a snapshot that is presented in order for someone to have 2 minutes or 3 minutes to articulate their position, and is not reflective of the entire state, because based on time, based on opportunity, that may fall short, and it usually does fall short. So Senator Mathews, what happens if there are chairs and there are folks who don't allow this robust conversation to come forward, and therefore you end up not having an opportunity to hear from a cross-section of Minnesotans? What are we supposed to do, even as the health of my community hangs in the balance, whether it's a small percentage or big percentage? And I will end up asking for someone from the department to speak to the data issue that you have brought forth. What are we supposed to do if we can't even get a bill heard, and therefore our voice heard or even on the record when we think in terms of the legislative process?
Senator Champion, this is getting a little far afield here. Senator Mathews wants to answer this question, but I'm almost getting a little offended by your line of questioning.
Well, Madam Chair,
Senator Champion.
Madam Chair, I hope I'm not offending anyone, because I'm just asking about the process itself, because what I've heard Senator Mathews put forward is that instead of the rulemaking process, where it's my understanding that the department had over 10,000 public comments, and those were posted, and there was a process that was done, that he's saying that the better process is the legislative process. And I know that not all bills or proposals that are put forward are heard, and therefore the public doesn't have an opportunity to be engaged. And so I'm trying to understand how he's proposing that's a better process than the one that's in place. So if the chair is being offended, I really wish not to offend the chair. I'm talking about the process itself.
I understand, Senator Champion. The legislative process has been in place for over 100 years. We have chairs around this table that I know that have had hearings on bipartisan bills. And so it's there's over 4,000 bills that are introduced in a biennium. It's literally impossible to hear all these bills. Senator
Madam
Mathews.
Chair, if
Senator
I can speak to
Mathews.
that. Okay.
Madam Chair and Senator Champion, again, great question, and thanks for raising it. Yes, the legislature is not a perfect process. The rulemaking process isn't either, and chairs change, majorities change, legislatures change, and we're accountable to our districts, and if we're not doing what our district is sending us to do, our constituents have the right every few years to replace us, and that's the way that it should be. The rulemaking process is even more imperfect and less desirable than the legislative process. As you pointed out, the public can come and have input and have testimony on a bill. With the rulemaking process, all they're able to do is to submit a comment on a website that can often be hard to find. And there's no accountability there, at least the people that come and testify. They may be our constituents or the constituent of another legislator, and they can work and communicate with us and influence us, and they have, we work for them, and they can vote for us or not vote for us. We don't have that opportunity with the agency. They're an unelected body. They are distant from the constituency and not accountable to them. And they don't even have an opportunity to have their voice heard other than just an online written comment through the website. So I understand that, yes, the legislative process is imperfect. This issue and many others don't always get as far as some authors or proponents want to push for their issues each year. It is the best system that we have out of the imperfect systems, because we all are human and we all have our shortcomings. But the rulemaking process is far more imperfect than the legislative process is, in my opinion.
And
Senator
lastly,
Champion.
Madam Chair,
Senator
and
Champion.
just so that we're clear, when I talk about the uncertainty and the challenges of the legislative process, it doesn't matter who's in control. From my vantage point, it creates a problem, especially when you have chairs who won't hear this information, and therefore, if we don't allow for there to be another process that seems to at least get some response in the marketplace and that information gets posted versus a process where individuals won't hear your bills at all. And so with that being said, Madam Chair, can I ask a question of Greta Gautier, who is with the MPCA, around the data and the significance of the data around emissions and whether it helps or not? Because that's
Madam Chair,
Senator Johnson.
I hate to interrupt, but what is our jurisdiction of this bill?
It is, we are the Finance Committee, and Senator Mathews came with a saving of 22,000 or so. We do have the department here. I will allow this line of reasoning to go, Senator Champion, but we do have 4 other people that would like
This is my
to
last
say
question.
something. So we have
I got it.
Mr. Kolash and Ms. Gauthier here.
Madam Chair, I do have a
Senator
question
Kidner.
on the fiscal note, if we,
As do I.
Thank you. We will get to that. So let's finish up with Senator Champion.
will.
And then we'll move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Who would like to take this?
Ms. Gautier?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Greta Gauthier. I'm Assistant Commissioner at the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to answer Senator Champion's question. Senator Champion, I believe your question is about the data on greenhouse gas reductions. Yes, so the bill will produce greenhouse gas reductions in Minnesota, as well as reducing other air pollutants. And the number that Senator Mathews has and others have cited is in a comparison to global greenhouse gas emissions. But I think it's important to note in Minnesota that we do have data showing that some communities have a much greater exposure to the kinds of pollution that come from motor vehicles. And therefore, the impact of this bill is going to, in the positive direction, is going to be much more strongly felt in areas of Minnesota where people have been, as you had said, Senator Champion, breathing air of lower air quality, that is more polluted air, for many, many, many years. So this bill will have a disproportionate positive impact on communities that have disproportionately been bearing the load of pollution from motor vehicles for many, many years.
And when you say positive,
Champion.
I just want to clarify.
Senator Champion, let's follow up, and we've got to, thank you.
So when you say positive, are you saying positive as if it's a negative because it allows for these greenhouse gas emissions to continue because of vehicle traffic? I just want to make sure that I'm understanding your terminology when you say positive versus negative.
Ms. Gauthier.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the question, Senator Champion. What I mean to say is that the bill will reduce greenhouse gases and the other pollutants that come from motor vehicles, and that the benefits of, I'm saying that the Clean Cars rule would reduce greenhouse gases and have benefits for the communities that have disproportionately borne this pollution. Mr. Chairman, the bill would be the reversal of that. The bill would end the Clean Cars rule. Therefore, we would not be able to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and the other pollution. Therefore, it would have a continued disproportionate impact on communities that have borne these higher levels of air pollution for generations. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No other questions, and thank you for your patience. I wasn't trying to
Madam
get
Chair.
under the chair's skin.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Champion. And thank you, Ms. Gauthier.
Madam Chair, if
Senator
I could,
Vincent?
to this point, Ms. Gauthier implied that there were certain populations that were more impacted. Does she mean according to density? And if so, do these rules only apply to those places where density and motor vehicle traffic would lead to worse health outcomes? And I'd like some demonstration of those health outcomes. I see no benefit in the fiscal note, or actually this fiscal note would show health harm. And so if Ms. Gauthier is going to contend that it's a specific population, then why does the rule need to apply to the entirety of the state? And if she's going to claim that there will be a change in health outcomes, I would like to see that documented somewhere.
Mrs. Gauthier, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the question, Senator Benson. The rule does apply to the state as a whole. Chapter 116.07 requires us to consider various areas of the state, but the rule for uniformity purposes, and it applies to the state as a whole. In the documentation we put forward that is required by Chapter 14, the Administrative Procedures Act, which is called the Statement of Need and Reasonableness for this rule. We did denote the impact of this rule from an equity standpoint, and that is not required, but it is something that we calculated to show that this rule would positively affect the pollution, air pollution levels in areas of the state that have for many years been disproportionately impacted by higher rates of pollution, air pollution, because of their proximity to freeways, to industrial areas, and to just the overwhelming abundance of pollution sources near where they live. So we calculated the rule for the whole state, Madam Chair, in our Statement of Need and Reasonableness as is required under Chapter 14, which we did produce and posted back in December, I believe. We did note these health impacts, and I would be more than happy to forward that document to the committee.
Madam Chair, what we just heard Ms. Gauthier say, again, there were specific parts of the state. They were making one generalized rule, which was not necessary, and they did analysis beyond what was required by the legislature. So there are so many ways that they are usurping the role of the legislature. And I know our primary objective here is the fiscal note, but Senator Champion opened the door. If I looked for bill status on emissions, I saw Senator Mathews' bill, did not have a hearing in the House. So Senator Champion's idea that every bill should get a hearing and that good ideas, are being stopped, that's fine. But Senator Dibble also introduced a bill. Its companion wasn't heard in the House. Senator Dibble allowed the PCA to monitor greenhouse gases. And so we can go down this rabbit hole all day long. Our objective should be the fiscal note. But if the PCA says there are specific areas of the state that are disproportionately impacted, they should make rules for the places that are disproportionately impacted. And I'm sorry, Madam Chair, Finance Committee is usually more disciplined than this. I'm happy to ask my question about the fiscal note separately, but to Ms. Gauthier's point, she just demonstrated that they could have made this rule with no single standard of air purity for all areas of the state and had less of an issue because they would have been following existing law.
Thank you, Senator Benson. And I am, for many of us, this is the first time we've heard this bill this year. So that's why we're going to let this conversation go, because I think it's a very important topic. And I think Senator Champion's issues are valid also. But Senator Benson, thank you for bringing up that, once again, the issue of disparity and treating the state as a whole comes up again when it should not apply. We have Senator Marty next.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and a couple of real brief comments on all three branches of government are important. Rulemaking was given to the agencies by the legislature. And I do think that the state agencies have an important role. And I really wanted to comment real briefly about the fact that I think Senator Champion hit the nail on the head in terms of his constituents, my constituents, frankly, all of our constituents have been affected by air quality problems. And that's largely this part of it that we're talking about deals with air quality from automobiles. And they are getting cleaner. As Senator Mathews, I think, said at the beginning, they're getting cleaner on their own. No, they're not getting cleaner on their own. They're getting clean because they were regulated and required to do that by federal law. And here, Senator Champion's point is his constituents, and frankly, all of us, but his are getting a worse dose of it because they're more traffic engrossed. All of us are affected by the air quality. It does kill people. It's a serious issue. And I think that, I mean, the $22,000 we're saving here is a drop in the bucket compared to the savings that the rules would make for constituents of ours. It does cost more right now for new electric cars. It costs more than internal combustion cars do. But even now, Consumer Reports is saying it's as much as $10,000 in saving over the life of a car when you're using an electric car, because not just cheaper fuel costs, but also cheaper maintenance. So if we're trying to talk about savings or how much, I think Senator Ingebrigtsen said, how much these rules have cost the state to do, that's a drop in the bucket compared to what consumers save by having more efficient cars. And this has been around for a long time, as we all recognize. At both state and federal level, this has been done by both parties have been doing a lot of this through the executive branch, and it's continuing here. I don't think that's inappropriate. I think the concern we should have is making sure our constituents have clean environment, that they have affordable cars, that they have things like that. And I think this rulemaking process is addressing that in a very reasonable manner. So we can disagree with it. The fiscal note here is literally a drop in the bucket compared to the amount of money that constituents will save by more efficient cars. So I definitely don't support the bill, but I just wanted to make those comments because everyone from Senator Mathews on have been talking about the substance of the bill. For the Finance Committee's things, it's literally a tiny thing compared to the overall cost of our automobile transportation system. And the agency, I think, is being very responsible with the rulemaking authority we gave them. And so I'm glad that they're moving forward with it. And I think we're mischaracterizing some things others are saying, because when people are saying Senator Champion's complaining that not every bill is heard, I didn't hear him say that. I heard him say that there are a lot of things that don't get heard through the legislative process. And when he's got constituents, as I do, and I think we all do, who are breathing contaminated air from this, we ought to be doing everything in our power to address that.
Thank you, Senator Marty. I'm going to go to the Chair of Environment, Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a couple comments and question to Greta first, if I could, Ms. Gauthier. Minnesota has been really going after and wanting to mirror the California car emission standards. And this is really quite interesting. Can you tell me what California has done? And if this bill, if this rule passes, as it is not too far from happening, are we going to be married to the California standards from this point forward? And let me remind members of the committee, California has 40 million cars, and we have 5. They have a complete different area of weather, obviously, than Minnesota. And for the life of me, I can't understand why we would do that. Could Ms. Gauthier comment on that, as well as what does it cost California so far, if she knows that?
Ms. Gauthier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Ingebrigtsen, for those questions. I do not know the cost of California's regulatory structure, but we can look into that for you, Senator Ingebrigtsen. Under the federal law, states have 2 choices for this type of regulation. They can choose either to go with the federal standard or with the California standard. The reason we have 2 choices is that when the federal standards were updated back in the last century, California was incorporated into that because their program was already established, and they are a powerful state in Congress. So we have 2 choices. All states have 2 choices for this type of regulation, air quality regulation. We can take the federal standard, federal plan, or we can use the California plan. We are, and since 2012 to 2020, those two were the same. They were identical. So in 2020, the Trump administration made the federal plan more lax, less protective of public health and the environment. We therefore are opting now to go with the California model, which is what 14 other states have done and are doing. And so what we are essentially doing is staying the course of where we have been since 2012 as a state. And so, Mr. Chairman, if California were to make changes in their regulations, then Minnesota would have to have another entire rulemaking process to determine whether or not we wanted to adopt whatever changes California has made, or whether at that point in time in the future, whenever that is, we would rather go with whatever the federal regulatory structure is at that point in time in the future. So whichever we decided, we would always, no matter what happens, if California makes a change, we always have to make a new rule in Minnesota. So our rulemaking process, as you know, for the chair of our, because we are one of the agencies under your purview, you know our rulemaking, Mr. Chairman, takes 18 months to 2 and sometimes longer years. And for this rule, the Clean Cars rule, the public comment period ended on the 15th of March, and we got more than 10,000 comments, which is more than we have ever gotten on a rule in the history of the agency that anyone can tell. Nobody can remember anything more than that, and we don't have records of any more comments than that. So this has been a very, very much in the public view, and we're grateful that we are able to come before you today and answer your questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Madam Chair?
Sorry.
Madam Chair, then I'm going to end it. So thank you for that. You don't know what it costs the California emissions. However, it is something that this administration wants to follow. I'm not quite understanding why we would want to mirror ourselves after somebody that has a blackout model. I don't know how they dealt with that. They've been dealing with the environment out there to the point where they can't even serve their people during a minor weather infraction. And with regards to the 10,000, that should tell two stories, actually. I live in a town of about 10,000, but there's a lot of Minnesota beyond my town. That's not very many when you think about it, members. I represent, like everybody sitting on this committee, about 82,000 people. And 10,000 might be the biggest that you've ever had. And that might also tell the story that, you know what, I'm the commissioner and I'm the governor. I may want to say, you know what, this is a big issue. If it's that big, let's bring it to the legislature. Let's put this together and let's move forward with this in a unified fashion instead of months and months and months now of rankering back and forth. So, Madam Chair, I just hope we can support this bill and rulemaking. Senator Marty, you're right. The legislature set that out, but these were set out for rules that were something that had to be done immediately and more, in a more timely fashion. And commissioners should have that authority. And that's what the legislator set them up for. Not something this big. This is huge. And there's nothing keeping them from actually bringing it to the legislature, but decided to go on their own. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ingebrigtsen. And to that point, I would just like to make a couple comments and then a question for Mr. Kolash or Ms. Gauthier, is that rulemaking is obviously important, but this has been, I believe, somewhat abusive. You're spending $353,000 from the environmental fund. And Senator Marty, I know you just a drop in the bucket, but that's $353,000 that we had no control over. So I do want to make that statement that It is significant. And, half of me wants to put an amendment on your bill, Senator Mathews, to say, just have the 7-county metro follow this. If that's a concern on the racial disparities, I'm not going there. He's looking at me. But do not treat the entire state as a whole, like on this issue. And to Senator Benson's comments, this is definitely abusive for the entire state, especially those border communities where they're going to go over to get their cars. Ms. Gauthier, can you tell me how many Midwest states have passed this? And of the 14 that have the California emissions, was it done by rulemaking or was it done by legislation?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your question. I believe Minnesota is the first state in the Midwest to do this. The rest of the 14 states are not located in the Midwest. Madam Chair, I know we have the information about which ones did it by rulemaking and which ones did not, and I will get that for you. I apologize, I do not have that at my fingertips right now.
Thanks, Ms. Gauthier.
Yeah.
And then we have Senator Kiffmeyer and Senator Kent afterwards.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the fiscal note, great discussion, though, and really good question, Madam Chair. Really, really good question about the 14 states and what they're doing and so on and so forth. But in regards to the assumptions, which are really important in reading assumptions here in page 2, on the third assumption, it says, we did not include estimated costs for rule implementation in fiscal year 22 and beyond because the outcome of the rulemaking is unknown. My understanding is that these assumptions are from the MPCA. So they on purpose decided to not put in the cost of rule implementation. So what they're talking here about, $353,000 is what they have already spent just to make the rule, but the real cost is in rule implementation. And I think it is critically important to get the cost of that rule implementation. And I would like Ms. Gauthier to answer as to when will that completion of this fiscal note occur? Because we need, and the assumptions here are really important, we don't just do fiscal notes for the past. We don't just do fiscal notes for this 1 year. We do fiscal notes all the way 3 years in advance, so actually about 4 years. So we have the next budget cycle, this one, the next budget cycle, and 24-25. And this fiscal note just decided on their own to not include or finish this fiscal note because they decided to say, well, the outcome of rulemaking is unknown, which doesn't make sense because Ms. Gauthier is testifying here that they fully expect to do so, and this fiscal note should be in accordance with that. So I have serious questions about the cost, and it's being used here by members saying, well, this is a drop in the bucket, this $353,000. Well, that's because you don't have the rest of the information.
Thank you, Senator Kiffmeyer. That was a very good point. Mr. Kolash or Ms. Gauthier?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. Senator Kiffmeyer, the reason we put that assumption the way that it is because the outcome of the rulemaking is dependent on the Office of Administrative Hearings and the administrative law judge. So we had 2 days worth of hearings with 70 testifiers in front of the ALJ last month. So we cannot presume what the ALJ will do, but in our statement of need and reasonableness, or SONAR document, which we filed with the rulemaking papers back in December, we did estimate that there would be 1 to 2 FTEs annually at MPCA that may be needed for implementation of this rule. But we usually put our fiscal notes in that regard because the outcome of the rulemaking is dependent upon the ALJ. That is not meant to signify that assumption number 3 was not meant to signify that we don't assume or do assume that the agency would do the work of the rulemaking. We are doing the work of the rulemaking, but the rulemaking outcome is dependent upon the administrative law judge.
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Well, it's interesting because When you went before the ALJ found that that was interesting, that they needed to have that information. So do we as the legislature. When we do budgets and we do this work, we don't do them in this sort of ways. So I think if you did it for the ALJ and the ALJ asked the questions, because it's pertinent, because it's important to the overall costs. But thank you, Madam Chair. That's the question for now. I think we have a little more homework to do in regards to this whole fiscal note thing.
Thank you for pointing that out, Senator Kiffmeyer. Senator Benson to this point, and then we have two
To
more
this point,
folks.
so I just heard Ms. Gauthier say 1 to 2 FTEs, but we don't know where that money is coming from. So they have rulemaking authority, but they don't have let's just spend money authority. And so do they have an extra 1 to 2 FTEs at the department, just waiting for work to be done? I think as we approach budget season, knowing that there are a couple of FTEs hanging out at MPCA waiting for rulemaking and that they don't need any legislative appropriation for them to do this work is interesting information. If stopping work doesn't save money, then doing work doesn't cost money. I'm trying to figure out how to reconcile that they have 1 to 2 FTEs, that they don't need to ask for money.
Well, and how much is in the environmental fund, and if that will be supporting their FTEs going
And
forward?
Madam Chair, are they allowed to appropriate from the environmental fund?
They did, $353,000.
They took it, but it wasn't appropriated. There's a difference between taking an appropriation. We appropriate, they do not.
That's right. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've been waiting to be able to respond to a few points.
Yes.
First of all, to your point, Madam Chair, you were talking about border communities wanting to take their business elsewhere, but as one who lives in basically a border community, the 8th largest city in the state of Minnesota, I know there's plenty of data, and I know it in my own community, that people want to have more choice in the vehicles that they buy. And right now that's not working for them. And they are taking their business elsewhere to buy their vehicles. So be careful how we make that argument, because it definitely is already occurring. I also want to respond to a theme that I've been hearing today that I think is really unfortunate, which is that if certain impacts within this state are localized in certain areas, and when we talk about density, there are pockets of density throughout our state, not just some, but you know, once again, that just misses the point and undermines that we are one state and we are highly interdependent on each other. Health costs do not just affect the individual or the individual community. We know that there are a lot of state costs when significant numbers of Minnesotans have poor health that require health care. And I would also point to another area that I think further demonstrates this issue of our interdependence. Health costs from air pollution and are one aspect, but another one is climate change. And we know that the transportation sector is a huge source of greenhouse emissions. And we know that climate change is responsible for weather extremes. And I think those weather extremes affect our agricultural communities significantly. We are already seeing it. I read something just in the past couple of weeks, I was trying to get back to it, that we're seeing the precipitation in our winters shift later in the season, and our falls are warmer. Overall, we're seeing warmer, hotter summers with extremes in terms of flooding and drought. And that certainly affects our agricultural communities, but that also affects those of us who don't live in, although I have some agriculture in my district too, not as much as some for sure, but it affects the whole state, because our whole state is deeply interconnected and deeply interdependent. And so I just want to reiterate, I think it is not a good place to get where we act like something affects some of us and doesn't affect all of us, because we are highly interdependent on each other for our success. And I think we should pay attention to that. So, you know, in terms of the overall cost-benefit analysis of this particular bill and this fiscal note that we're looking at, there's no question to me that saving $22,000 here is not nearly worth the ultimate long-term financial benefits to Minnesota to making these important changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Canton. Thank you for your patience. And Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm still just unclear, and Ms. Gauthier, could you speak briefly about what the implementation cost is? So it's the $320,000 plus 2 FTEs would be the total cost for implementation of this rule?
Ms. Gauthier.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Johnson, for the question. So what I should be more clear to say is that the reason the fiscal note is 0 is because the bill will stop the implementation of the Clean Cars rule. So that's why the fiscal note says there is no cost, because we would no longer be able to do it, but under the bill. Because the bill removes our ability to regulate motor vehicle emissions. One of the complicating factors in determining the implementation cost, and Madam Chair, I said we put in our sonar for our rule, which we posted in December for the public and the legislature to see that it may be up to 1 to 2 FTEs. But we don't know, because we don't know what the ALJ will do, and we don't know because also there is a 2-year waiting period required under federal law before this would take effect. So if this rule goes into effect, for example, if it were to go into effect in calendar year 2021, it would not take effect until model vehicles 2025. Because it would take 2 years to go into effect, and we have a 2-year waiting period. They're 2 years out already on the vehicle model years. So the federal 2-year imposition of waiting period, Madam Chair and Senator Johnson, plus the determination of the ALJ, both make it difficult for us to know what the implementation costs would be. The rulemaking cost of $352,000 is about average for rulemakings in Minnesota. There is a rulemaking guide book that is put together, and computing from what that book says about complicated rules like this, using the value of FTE at MPCA, we came up with that $352,000. So it is not, it is in line with what the basic guidelines say that rulemaking should cost. But so to be clear, our implementation costs are not known explicitly because of the 2-year delay and other things that may happen both in and outside of Minnesota during that time, and also because of the process dependent on the ALJ.
Senator Johnson. And then we are just about out of time.
Okay.
Senator Johnson.
Yeah, just briefly then. So then the costs that continue to come as this is implemented, would that be taken out of your budget currently? Do you have reserves for this implementation and budgeted in? Or is that something that you're going to be making a request from the legislature from?
Ms. Gauthier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since the rule would not, if it is passed into law or into the rulemaking process this year, would not take effect for 2 years, then our plan would be to come forward in a subsequent biennium with costs pertaining to that, such that they may be.
Okay, thank you for that question, Senator Johnson. More? Okay. And Senator Marty, or Senator Pratt, actually, and then Senator Marty, and then we have to wrap this up. We all have commitments.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I enjoy, thank you, Senator Mathews, for bringing this bill, because I think it's been a great discussion, and I think this discussion actually highlights why this should have gone through the legislative process. The very fact that Ms. Gauthier said that the national standards and California standards were the same until 2020, and now the state has to make a decision, a policy decision on which way to go, suggests that it takes the two branches of government working together to make that policy decision, not just one and not just the governor continuing to bypass the legislature. But I think Senator Benson and the testimony touched on a number of things where I think the fiscal note is failing. We continue to rely on, or the advocates continue to rely on the health savings, and yet there's nothing from MDH to show the health impact savings of this bill. Or maybe even contrary to that, by taking away the ability for the department to do the rulemaking, there should be health impact costs presumed in the bill, and there's not. And I find that lacking here. I hope that this is, and this just goes to show, among other things, where the administration made mistakes on their assumptions for particulate matter, where it was the particulate matter was 10 times greater and the savings was 10 times greater due to what they called a transcription error. This has been a shoddy process from the beginning. It should have been in the legislature. And Madam Chair, I think this fiscal note needs to include MDH as well, if that's the basis of the rulemaking in its base. And so, Senator Mathews, I'll be voting for the bill.
Thank you. Senator Pratt, very good comment. Senator Marty, very quickly, we're going to lose.
Very quickly, first, Madam Chair, I was concerned about some of the completeness of fiscal note until Ms. Gauthier pointed out that there's 2-year wait. So with that, I think the fiscal note is accurate that way. On Senator Pratt's last point about the health department thing, that would really boost the cost of this bill. This bill wouldn't be a small savings because if you're counting health department health impacts by taking away these standards, that's going to be a huge impact where the state's going to realistically be paying a lot more because of worse health. And I just think the reality is we have to, you're complaining about the fiscal note including too many costs on one hand, and now you're saying not enough of the cost, because the huge cost of this bill, not of the rulemaking, but the huge cost of this bill is that it would produce worse health impacts. That's the taxpayer cost. The individual consumers are going to be paying more for fuel and everything else if we pass this bill. So I think it's very important we pass it, that we stop this bill and continue the rulemaking process. So I thought the agency might be inaccurate in its fiscal note, but now when we hear that there is a 2-year wait, it is appropriate they come back here and ask for the funds if the rules are implemented, if the ALJ approves it, if we go forward with the process. They have 2 years to come in and say, we're going to need some staff to deal with this then. But that's not the case we have now. So I think the fiscal note's complete, and I think the bill is a terrible step backwards. And I'm disappointed to hear that. And one final one, because several people keep saying different standards for the metropolitan areas. That doesn't work that way. The federal law, and Senator Pratt, when you said that if California and the federal government are pretty similar, they were pretty similar until the Trump administration canned the clean car rules, making the federal standards much weaker than California's. So there was that divergence, again, because of executive order at the federal level. And so our state administration is stepping in and filling it in and going back to roughly where we would have been anyway.
Thank you, Senator Marty. Senator Pratt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to that point, Senator Marty, I guess my point is that's a policy decision that should be made by all of us, not just the administration. So while they were the same, and I agree, the fact that we have a policy discussion means it should be in the legislature.
Thank you, Senator Pratt. Senator Mathews, closing comments.
Madam Chair, I'll be very brief, and I just want to say thank you. I'll reiterate many of the points that I shared at the beginning. I'll continue this conversation forward, and I appreciate members' robust discussion from both sides here. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mathews, and it was a very good discussion. Members, Senator Pratt, would you please like to move the bill?
Madam Chair, roll call, please.
Roll call has been requested. Roll call is granted. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that Senate File 450 pass and move to general orders.
Thank you, Senator Pratt. On that motion, clerk will take the roll. Chair says aye.
Senator Ingebrigtsen?
Aye.
Senator Marty?
No.
Senator Benson,
Aye.
Senator Champion,
No.
Senator Franzen,
No.
Senator Johnson,
Aye.
Senator Kent,
No.
Senator Kiffmeyer,
Aye.
Senator Pratt.
Aye.
There be 6 ayes and 4 noes. The motion does prevail. Senate File 450 is placed on general orders. Thank you, Ms. Gauthier, and thank you, Mr. Golash, for coming today. And members, just stay tuned. We're not sure about a hearing tomorrow, so just watch your email. Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Madam.